All right, let's refactor this constructor function for our input type to use the new class syntax. So all we have to do is come up to our constructor function and change from function to class, and then get rid of the parentheses. And then the very first thing inside of our class, we want to define a constructor. This constructor can take parameters. So this constructor function we're defining here is really what we had before with our input constructor function. So now we have a nice explicit name for it, and it's wrapped inside of our class. This will probably look much more familiar to you if you're used to other object-oriented languages. So we have an explicit constructor, which is nice. We can see the scope of that versus the rest of the methods on this type. And the nice thing is, we don't have to worry about calling input.prototype afterward anymore, though we can if we want. Which actually, by the way, let's actually stop here and save this, and let's just make sure this is still working in the browser because there's nothing that should impede that. Let's reload here, and you can see it's still working. In fact, if we wanted to really test this out, we could come add a character in here, and you can see that's added in front of each of the elements. So one really important thing to note is that behind the scenes, classes are still using prototypical inheritance. So you still have to understand how that works. We just have a nice new syntax to work with, creating constructor functions and defining methods on the prototype, such that it's almost transparent that we have these methods. So for example, we can come here and just lift this setType method, bring it up here and paste it inside, get rid of input.prototype here. We don't need the semicolon, and just like method definitions on an object literal, we don't need this verbosity here. We can yank that out and we just define the method just like the constructor function, and it can take parameters and then it can perform things like setting the type variable to change it. And then in this case, we can return this, which is the instance when the setType method is invoked. And that gives us that nice fluent syntax for chaining together method calls. Now I'll leave render as it is. I'll add another S so we can make sure that this is updating, and we'll reload this in the browser and you can see things are still working. So we are indeed setting the various different types. And if we wanted to, we could come comment out setting the type, and we should have the default in all cases then, which would be a text box. And we do indeed have that. So this is just a new syntax that really simplifies things. So let's lift the render function and bring it up. And it's really all about concision again. We're yanking out all this unnecessary verbosity, and we're focusing on just what it is that we need to work on. Our render method, our setType method. And the nice thing is we wrap this all up in a class. I really think this is a nice, clean approach to defining constructor functions and setting methods on the prototype. So at the end of the day, we have this nice hierarchy where we reuse our methods, but our instances have separate properties specific to them.